You're credited with making the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, into a highly successful and effective operation that has had a major impact on the U.S. military. You began, and could you begin describing how you revolutionized and helped this leadership transformation to really impact the U.S. military? Because if there's one person that has had a real impact, most independent analysts will say it's you, how you really turned around JSOC and what you made it into this incredible, efficient, and powerful, potent operation.
Yeah. First, I'm getting credit for the work of a lot of people.
Of course.
I happen to be in charge, and a team did this. But I got to tell you a little bit of a story to get to context. First, Joint Special Operations Command was created in the aftermath of the failed Iranian hostage rescue mission in 1980. And the decision was made that we had tried to use an ad hoc organization to do a very difficult task. And so this command was created to pull the most elite forces together, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, the Rangers, and make them a cohesive team as opposed to siloed organizations. I was a part of that command both in a subordinate unit and then on the staff for the years from 1981 and whatnot until I took command of it in 2003. But it wasn't a bad command, it was a great command. It was the greatest command in the world, and it was the most proficient in what it did ever. And so when I took it in October 2003, it was this amazing machine. Unfortunately, it wasn't the right machine for the war we had in 2003. And sometimes I think us changing was harder because we were so successful, because people felt so good about what they did and they literally were peerless in their skills that it was harder to get people to let go of the side of the pool and change. But essentially the challenge was we had been designed, and our charter said, respond to terrorist acts. Now by definition that's reactive, and we were really a hostage rescue force. You think in the old days when we were all young, a airplane would get hijacked and they'd take it somewhere and they'd ask for money and safe haven and some people released from jail. And if you did all that, they'd let your people go, maybe blow up the airplane. If you didn't do that, you try a rescue, and we did a little bit of both. So we were designed for those episodic events that come, or for a very deliberate operation where you plan and train for months and then you go do this thing. After 9/11, we spent the first period, 2001, in Afghanistan and the invasion of Iraq. But what happened was Al-Qaeda was suddenly much bigger, much wider spread geographically, much different culturally than anything we were prepared for, and they didn't do an act and then give you time to respond. They blew stuff up. They flew planes into World Trade Centers. They acted, and then they simply presented you with a fait accompli. So our requirement changed from respond to terrorist acts to destroy an enemy network to protect America, its allies, and whatnot. So we had this network which was largest in 2003 in Iraq, although it wasn't there before the invasion. It really grew in the wake of that. And it was in Pakistan, but it was spread across the region. So I was put in charge of the military part of defeating Al-Qaeda, which is this movement that's franchised, and it's this diverse network across many areas with some pretty darn good people. So that's a completely different kind of problem. Spear phishing is what we'd sort of been designed to do, if there's a good analogy, was absolutely inappropriate for defeating something like this. So what we had to do was change how we operated, and we had a burning platform to do it with. We were losing in Iraq in 2004. And although you can go back to the newspapers now and read it, and you will never see someone say, yes, we are losing in Iraq. They'd say, we're not winning yet, and that's the military euphemism for we are losing. And so we had this impetus of we had to turn things around. So what we started with the organization we had and said, well, how do we do better? And so what do you do first when you want to do better? You do what you already do really well. You shoot better, you fly faster, you do whatever it is your strength, but then you run into physics. You can't do more of what you do. You can't sleep, at a certain point you can't sleep less. So we realized what we had to do was form a network that was better than the enemy's network. It was wider, it communicated faster. We had this siloed, insulated organization that had to suddenly break down walls communicate really fast so that if, sort of like a human body, if in Mosul, Iraq, somebody stepped on your toe, you knew it in Kirkuk instantaneously. If an enemy force moved from there to there, you knew it and you could respond immediately. And so we started building techniques and relationships with the intelligence agencies, the FBI, Department of State, conventional forces, Iraqi forces. We started building this network, and we went, the analogy I used to use is, we started the war as the greatest booksellers in the world, and we ended as Amazon.com. The product was the network. We could do anything by leveraging this network. And what we thought was our core strength, which was going in the door and shooting someone before they can return fire, it was knowing where they were. It was understanding them. It was building this responsive capability that allowed us to operate. It was completely different from what we had been. Before we had been, the analogy, we were a bullet. If you aimed us correctly, wherever we went, we would strike true and have effect. But that wasn't good enough because we were dependent upon who aimed us, who aimed the gun, and when they pull the trigger. We became the gun, and we became a thinking organization. And I had this collection of people who just took up that task, and they got better at it every month. And I didn't start with my vision. I didn't have a vision for that. We started doing it, and as we did it, we started getting better and better at it, so we started doing more and more of it, and you reinforce what worked. And so for us, it was a complete revolution. The other part of it, as we touch leadership, is it revolutionized the way we lead. It had to. I was a 46-year-old brigadier general on 9/11. And at 46, you are just to the point in your life where you don't want to change anymore. You bought all the clothes you want to have till you die. You've loaded your iPod. You've learned everything in your organization. You don't want the rules to change. You just don't want it different because you've mastered it and you're doing pretty good. And suddenly, almost everything I knew I had to do differently. Instead of leading commandos with big shoulders and big knuckles, I'm leading a group that looks a lot like this group. Men, women, old, young, civilians, military, and I'm trying to get them to form this extraordinary network, and I can't order them because most of them aren't military. Most of them work for the CIA or Department of State or somebody else. So all I can do is say, this is a really good idea. Wouldn't you want to do this? And it required leading by influence in a way that I had not been brought up to do. But it worked really well. And you're dealing with good people. I mean, we're people who really wanted to do well, so it became an extraordinary experience.